Now, going by the unexpected exits from COVID-19 induced recession in the fourth quarter of 2020, Nigeria's fragile economy is set for a rebound in the year 2021, as the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank have expressed optimism in the country's economy. According to reports released by the IMF, Nigeria's growth forecast for 2021 was raised to 2.5% from 1.5% earlier announced in January. While the World Bank projects a moderate growth of 1.4% in 2021, in spite of the cautiously positive outlook from the World Bank, experts say the reality on ground shows that the Nigerian economy remains fragile, troubled by uncertainties around global oil price path and local production capabilities. Now, rising inflation is also on one side, and a horrifying rate of unemployment, unprecedented security challenges, and uncertainty in government policies could make the projection unduly optimistic. Well, to discuss this more and look at what this means, of course, burning economic issues for the first work day of the week, I have live in our Lagos studio is the senior economist at SPM Professionals, Mr. Paul Alaje. Mr. Alaje, thank you very much. It's great to have you in the studio.
Thank you so very much for having me.
Yes, even my intro already says it all. All of this that we are grappling with. But first, let me ask you, IMF's projection and reprojection. We've had figures from IMF. After some months, they'll come together and put data together and come up with new figures. What do you make 2.5%? To me, that looks like a tall order.
Well, 2.5% looks still fall within the boundary that many of us are expecting Nigeria for 2021. So as I speak with you, what we are considering is between 1% to 2.5%. So it might be upper limit, but it's still within the boundary. And I don't think IMF's position is out of place. When you look at how Nigeria performed in Q2 2020, when the reports of the negative growth was first published, minus 6.4%, after which we are third quarter, which was minus 3%, and now the fourth quarter, we had 0.11%. So what will be the base year for second quarter? You'll be comparing 2021 with a time where we had minus 6.4%. So definitely Q1 report may be somewhat positive. Q2 report will be far better than both Q1 last quarter. We're talking about Q4. But when you sum all of these together, applied economics is more concerned about impact of the GDP. Impact. And there are economic indices that we use to measure this impact. One of them is complexity index. Complexity index summarizes the available knowledge within a country. And in 2018, when that was measured, 2017-2018, by MIT, 113 or 133 countries were measured. Nigeria was the least among all the countries, which means what Nigeria exports to the rest of the world in terms of knowledge contribution is the one with the least knowledge in terms of knowledge added. So on one hand, GDP may be increasing, but when wealth within the country is not increasing and is not evenly distributed, then we are also concerned with another problem which you call Human Development Index. So even though our GDP is increasing, what is happening to human development is a combination of three factors. What is happening to income? Now, as your income increase, as my income increase.
Not at all.
So if you say not at all, I can imagine people watching us all over Nigeria today. You look at inflation at over 14%, and you look at food inflation at over 20-21%. When you look at these figures, and we have someone who is a fixed income earner, we're talking about retirees, we're talking about government workers, we're talking about people in private sector whose income are relatively fixed. Even those in politics that have statutory salary, it also affected them. Even Mr. President's income. I am talking of official rate now, because I need to speak professionally.
Yes.
Now, see, these income are not what they earned last year, even though the figures are the same. But inflation, the invisible force that is taken away from them, from us, has already eaten deep. So if you earn 100 naira, right now, you are earning about 85, 87, 82, 83 naira in terms of revenue. So in the real sense, we are actually losing money. So even though your GDP may be high, and also when GDP is increasing, you should watch inflation. Inflation may also increase likely. Now, when you look at all of those that has been mentioned, you now wonder by how much does GDP figure matters? One factor. No matter how good your GDP figure is, if your ease of doing business, because for me, the quality growth is measured on ease of doing business, access to power, access to credit, ability to resolve dispute. So what is happening to ease of doing business? Even if your GDP is 2% or 3%, if you are among the top 20 in the world on ease of doing business, what you are going to see is Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, which is close to this place, Abuja-Kogi Expressway will be factories. And that's what we want to see. So National Bureau of Statistics, we now talk less of unemployment. Yeah. It will not worry us. 33.3%. That means out of labor force, and mark you, labor force is not the entire Nigerian population. That's not correct. Labor force is the part of the population that is willing and able to work. Now, those that have gotten job from labor force is 33.3%. I've not spoken about underemployment that is over 20%, which is over 50%. But arguably, some figures put it at 40%. But I'm not here to debate whether methodology is right or wrong. But I'm saying, look at the people that are unemployed. According to National Bureau of Statistics, government figure, 33.3%. Yeah. If you remove about 80 million, and to be charitable, let's say 100 million. Remove about 100 million. So giving extra figures. Yeah. So you have 108 million people that are too old to work or too young to work or not working. At all. Then you have 33.3% of the people. If you add that to the number, you have significant number of people to be taken care of by low number of people. What that means is if your labor force is low and your unemployment is high, one thing is guaranteed: low productivity. No matter how strong those people within the labor force are that are gainfully employed. So our GDP is a concern. IMF figure is not wrong, if you ask me, because what drives Nigeria economy are not what we can both control. They are global oil prices. True. Less than $70 a barrel. That is what we have today. And good news, Nigeria oil seems to increase. But what happens in the next 20 years? I don't know if you will still be anchoring this program. But in the next 20 years, I'm afraid. I'm afraid because I don't think I will bring the kind of car I brought here today. You know why? 20 years ago, was it this kind of car? Our parents.
We should be doing electric cars by then.
So what will happen, that means there will be a charging port for my vehicle in your studio. What will happen to crude oil? What will happen to the kind of education? What will happen to this program? What will happen if we are not thinking this future? And it's not far at all. You know, just think of when you were in primary school, 20 years ago, when you were in secondary school, when you were in university. What will happen? We are still fixated. Government is saying no revenue, which is correct. It is correct because I think by now we should adopt innovative method of generating revenue. There are companies that
is looking very ugly.
There are companies making trillions of naira in Nigeria. Yes. This is what I've tasked National Bureau of Statistics to do. Work with FRS. Maybe you can show FRS direction. You said that some sector grew in recession. But this sector, their revenue to government has not grown. So when we say there is an economic quagmire, it does not mean 1 naira disappeared. It means that more and more people make money, less and less. More and more people lost money, less and less people make money. But for those that made money, 14% GDP growth rate, arguably in telecoms, you know. So, but what has happened to revenue? What has happened to the tax component of revenue for telecom companies, banking sector, and so on and so forth? It has not increased significantly. So I think when we look at those numbers, when we look at the figures coming from National Bureau of Statistics, how will decision maker help them, shape their decision and also help government to generate revenue? Because for me, the major concern we have in terms of what government should do, one of those problems will still be revenue generation. And if you don't talk revenue, then you have to talk 32.9 trillion naira, not gifts, but debts.
That's another big one. Another very, very big one. Debt and what stands now. Now, Paul, let's touch on structural issues, inadequate infrastructure, before we move to issues around trade that we grapple with at this time. How do you see all of this playing out? I'm particular about this because, well, I think the second wave, maybe gradual, I can say, maybe around this part of the world, we are doing better. But in the United States and the UK, they still have disruptions. We know what's happening. The figures are still going high in some parts of America. What do you think would happen? Because all of this will impact on the growth of all of these economies.
Well, I think the world is a bit anxious generally, particularly economic decision makers. Everybody is trying to put up positive outlook, which is welcome, but we should all do that with a lot of caution. World Bank seems to be reviewing rates. IMF is reviewing rates, which is fine. And everybody seems to be reviewing rates in expectation of what the future projection will be. Yes. But you know, as they say, figures don't lie. In terms of infrastructure, I can give it to Ministry of Transport. True. Because of the rail. I only hope that in the next 10 years, we will sustain this energy.
True.
If we can sustain the energy to connect the whole of Nigeria with rail, and we now say we don't want subsidy, it makes sense. You know why? There is now an alternative for people. When you remove subsidy, you have created demand side and imaginary supply. And I'll explain that very quickly. I know some economists have said, what are you doing with subsidy? Remove it. Each time they say that, I liken those economists to those who say Nigeria should devalue. Nigeria should devalue. When we devalue, what happens? I told them that those economics are not only dangerous, they are also wicked. They want you to clap with one hand. Because Nigeria devalued 2 times, beginning of 2020 till now, you know what happened to our debt? Approximately 1 trillion naira was added to debt for borrowing no money.
Yes.
So when you have people who are very good theoretically and cannot see through economic scope and come out to say, I've read in a textbook, this is what I think you should do. Those people are not only dangerous, they are also very, very wicked. So, no, you know, so when you look at what Nigeria is doing right now in terms of rail, how do we connect Nigeria together? It helps with the issue of security.
Yep.
It helps with mobility. We have said time and again that there are a lot of output that are wasted. We could not move them to city because of cost, because of road. But can we use rail? Rail could help us. That means we need to deploy more in infrastructure. That means rather than waiting for tickets, you know, to generate revenue, can we start considering haulage as a means of revenue generation from that? Can we start considering advertising in rail as a medium of generating revenue? Can we start building plazas around rail station as a way of generating revenue? Can government totally look for private sector to form PPP and give targets based on revenue that can be generated so that what private sector brings and support government is getting from outside Nigeria, we can say we want to connect rail nationwide. The energy is positive now. If it is wrong, we will say it. But we should not stifle it with limited revenue or limited resources so that we can get to a place, at least from now, 2021, say by 2030, where are we? I am not saying the rail we are deploying now is best in the world, but it's better than not having anything.
Sure.
Because we can now move more people, the place is relatively secured, we are able to maintain as at when due. If we need to continue with our Chinese partner to bring it, I don't care which country the technology comes from. For me, I want technology that can help us to reduce difficulty in bringing commodities. Now it's moving people. Can we start considering moving goods, even more than people? So that economic activity we circulate more, and GDP that we are hoping will grow in real terms, not in nominal terms. So once it grows in real terms, it will trickle down to job. Then there will be more jobs which will be created, and inflation will reduce. Why? What is the kind of inflation we have majorly? Food inflation. As caused by 2 things, insecurity and logistics. Yep. So if you're able to connect, which I think is what economic planners of Nigeria should start thinking about, and not to say, go and devalue the naira, we really need it. Let us borrow as much as we can. I don't think these are considerations we should have. We've said it time and again, And right now, I'm happy Nigerian authorities also saying, wait a minute, let us reconsider some of our strategy so that we can get to that point.
But there's no how we'll be on this discussion talking about burning economic issues. I won't touch on this FX market, that very big market that everybody talks about every day. It's that market that drives the whole economy because we are still an import-dependent economy. Now, with all of the efforts, we still have this limited foreign exchange capacity, and it comes with all of the efforts by the CBN. Where do we stand at the moment? I&E window and all of the windows. We even got to the point of dollar for naira and all of that. What are we making of all of that?
Okay, so how did we get here is the first question. The man watching us on YouTube right now, the YouTube creator the YouTube creator that is imported. Even though you feel you are watching it at your comfort, that software is imported. Your phone, mobile phone, is approximately about $300. We said crude oil that Nigeria is using to generate FX is about $60, $65, $70. And if your phone is about say $350, that means your phone, you are carrying 5 barrels of crude oil around to receive call, 5 barrels. Now imagine somebody whose phone is about $1,000.
Yeah.
How many barrels are you
barrels?
carrying? Now imagine the entire Nigeria. So long-term goal Nigerian authorities should look at, particularly state government, and I wish state government could just see the loophole in federal government and seize the occasion by turning their states to production hub, production center. Lagos State, growth pole from Lagos to Ogun State, it has started happening naturally. But imagine if we put policy to it such that we encourage production of phone, and when that is sufficient enough, the association, the group or whatever can approach federal government to say we need to stop importation because of excess supply. So when you look at FX market, importation, this paper, I'm not sure if it is produced in Nigeria. Paper. And people viewing us and people that will watch us in the near future, can you imagine the volume of paper that we consume? I'm not talking of tissue. I'm talking of A4 paper. Where are we importing from? I don't know if you are with me. And look at vehicles, and not just brand new vehicles. We are talking of used vehicles. The annoying part, because I've read the report shared by National Bureau of Statistics Q4, talking of trade report, over 300 billion was spent to import vaccines. These vaccines were not for COVID, measles, and so on. And guess which country? Denmark. What did they export to them? Is missing among the top 10 countries that Nigeria had trade relationship with. Not just this quarter, the quarter before fourth quarter, over 300 was spent to import similar things from Denmark. And when you look at one quarter report, if you average it, we are talking of over 1.2 billion. 1.2 trillion, because that was in billion, is what Nigeria spent. Trillion to import vaccines. And we have pharmacies, we have we study pharmacognosis here, we have medical doctors. All you hear, the news about doctors and about pharmacies these days and nurses is that they are going on strike.
Yes, sir.
And most of these production, arguably, subject to verification, Nigerians have input. Any country that relegates research and development, any country where research and development is relegated, such country we use its hard-earned currency to pay for what others have researched. So central bank does not print hard currency. It is what we generate that we will give. And if you don't have sufficiently hard currency, what will happen is you are going to devalue, which is another thing that we're experiencing. So it is not that central bank don't want to release or it want to release, but you cannot spend what you don't have. If you don't have it, you have to borrow it. And that is why foreign loans sometimes look attractive, because you will get them in hard currency. It will boost your foreign reserve, even though it's very dangerous, particularly for economies that are susceptible to devaluation over and over again. So what should Nigeria do? Yeah. How do we promote exports? That's the way to go. We all know it. How do we promote exports? Starting from agriculture, where we seem to have competitive cost advantage, but not just for us to export cocoa or to export paddy or to export. How do we export food? We eat canned food. How can we? So we are not cursed that we cannot export, not just to African nations, but how do we export to the rest of the world? This is the direction government should be looking at. And if a federal government says it wants to focus on other things, there are states in Nigeria that should focus on that, because the IGR you are looking for will not come if you don't take the right economic decision, which is export driven with the support of state government. Would say states cannot have part equity in businesses and form JVs or form PPP in a way so that Nigeria can continue to export, and central bank will see such state as important state, even for FX to the country.
Let's wrap up on this note. What kind of growth do you see? What sources? You've talked about exports. And as we move on, with all of these figures and reprojections, let's wrap up. That inclusive growth, when do you see us lifting people out of poverty? That has been the mantra of this government.
Well, lifting people out of poverty, I know government has great intention to lift people out of poverty. But when you look at government spending, if I want to lift somebody out of poverty and I'm going by the roadside and I say, take 10 naira as a beggar, the person will probably go and eat something and next day is hungry again. But when I say, you see that work, go and do it and this is what you'll be earning, that person will not need to beg again, is out of poverty. So when you look at the approach of government, 70%, even before this administration has been up to 80%, that is why Nigerians have perpetually been in poverty because of pattern of government. And that is why I commend infrastructure that is sustainable over time, over 10, over 20 years. So we need to change the way we spend. And I've said it, as an advice that every money, all the money generated from crude oil should be spent directly on infrastructure. All money is generated from crude oil. Put it 100% on infrastructure. Let people know that this commonwealth that comes from crude, this money that comes from gold, this money that comes from natural resources is going on infrastructure. Yes, government will spend. Government now need to think outside the box. Government need to become innovative. Members of National Assembly, members of State Assembly, I'm talking of senators and honorables, they need to think of how to generate revenue. And if you ask me that is this possible, I will tell you, yes, it is possible. You know why? In this country today, there are organizations making billions and trillions of naira, even with under declaration. They're making trillions of naira in terms of revenue. But governments don't, and politics set into it, we are supporting during election and all of those. But it comes a time where we must say, we must do what we need to do if we don't want people to continue to travel abroad for education, for medical, for medical checkups, and so on and so forth. It is money those people spend to build their institution. And when you look at most of those hospitals and schools, they are not public sector owned, they are private sector owned. But here we say government should build, and when government it does not have the capacity. However, there is nobody in private sector that will put such investment in place that is not sure whether Boko Haram will come and attack, that is not sure whether bandits will open their schools. So government should focus on security, create environment, provide infrastructure, and see if private sector will not invest. With the support of central bank, maybe try and cover around one program or the other, which central bank may form now or in the future, then we can see a more organized society, a more organized system through that will lead to economic prosperity for all.
Mr. Paul Alaje, it's always nice having you on the show, starting with you this Monday. Senior Economist, SPM Professionals. Thank you very much and have a safe trip.
Thank you so very much for having me.
All right then.